Welcome to the Charlotte Mason Show. I'm your host, Julie Ross, and today I'm here with Suzanne Gose from Flip Flop Spanish, and we are going to be talking about teaching your child a foreign language according to Charlotte Mason's philosophy. And I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you, Suzanne, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I know this can be a very overwhelming subject, especially for parents who do not speak a second language. My hand here. And I love what Charlotte Mason had to say about how to teach foreign language, and we'll dive into that. But I also think there's the reality of how much time and effort we have as parents today in teaching something like that, as opposed to she talked about hiring a French nursemaid to come and teach your children. That would be fantastic, right? I don't have that luxury. So how do we incorporate some of her ideas and her principles and just her overarching philosophy of education in general, but then actually make it where today's modern parent can actually feel equipped and encouraged and feel like they can actually do this in real life. So let's dive in here. So tell us a little bit about just you and your family and kind of your homeschool journey, and then what you're currently doing.
Okay. So I was a public school teacher before babies, and I loved it. I loved it. The learning environment was terrible, but I loved teaching. And then so when we had our first child, it was a big surprise. It's always a surprise, I guess, but I was surprised. And I was going to stay home with the babies until they were school age, because that's what you do. And but I missed teaching so much. So I put out a little email to those people called homeschoolers. I'd heard of them before. And I thought, well, maybe somebody wants a Spanish teacher or a Spanish tutor. So I put that out. And the next morning I had 42 emails, which back then was a bunch.
Yeah. Is that in the AOL days?
Yeah, it was a Yahoo Groups thing that we sent out, because I'd heard about these people. I was like, does anybody I just miss teaching.
Yeah.
And so I started classes, and these kids, they leaned forward and they looked me in the eye and they thanked me, and their homework was done. It was crazy. I didn't know that teenagers sentences and look you in the eye. I thought they just didn't come that way. Yeah. And so that's how I became a homeschooler, was because of my experience with homeschoolers. Yes. And so I asked them, how does my 9-month-old little boy, how do I get him to turn out like this kind of a, because I've never seen one before. And they said, I don't know, we just homeschool. And so that was that. And so then 5 babies later, and hundreds of classes and hundreds and hundreds of students, all the curriculum that I was writing for my classes, people started asking for, just to have it printed. They couldn't come on a certain Wednesday, or it was too far for them to drive. So my husband said, well, why don't you get published? I was like, well, I don't know. So we did. And then the more products I made for my classes, the more tools. The ones that didn't work, we didn't publish. There were plenty, y'all, that did not work. And those are not in Flip Flop Spanish now. So all the bad ideas, they just didn't get used again. And all the good ideas that the students really responded to turned into Flip Flop Spanish.
That's awesome. Because I think in theory, you can think, oh, this will work with children, or, oh, this is a great way to teach whatever. And then you get into actual practice and you're like, whoa, okay, no. So I love that you kind of were able to try it out with lots of different students and kind of see what worked and what didn't work. And that's what Charlotte Mason did. Her was a living curriculum, and they would try books and they didn't work, she would replace them, and they would try different things, and she was constantly observing children. And so kind of like Charlotte Mason.
Your own children responded. Yeah, I would try at home and it worked great. I'd speak to my own children. They did great, but I was speaking Spanish to them constantly. And so then other people's children, they just looked at me blankly. They had, and I only had 1 hour a week too. So that was something also that I had to really realize, that these students only have 1 hour a week, because mom and dad were not doing a lot at home. So I had to start fostering that idea of, parents, you really need to come alongside me and help. And so anyhow, so all that came into the curriculum.
Yeah. And how did you hear about Charlotte Mason, or how did you bring that kind of into your homeschooling?
I love this part. So this part of my life was so embarrassing, actually. But I was at a convention, and I was selling my flashcards and the See It and Say It. And here comes Catherine Levison running down the road. So she wrote a Charlotte Mason handbook, right? The handbook to Charlotte Mason, I think, is the name of hers. And she came running down the road, literally running, waving my flashcards in her hand. She said, "You're here, you're here. This is the most Charlotte Mason curriculum I've ever seen." oh, she goes, I tell people about you all the time with Charlotte Mason. I was like, man, I should meet this Charlotte Mason lady. Like, who is that?
Me too, man. I love to meet her.
Degree. I mean, I have a degree in education.
Well, yeah, we never would learn about somebody like that.
No, never heard of her. So I immediately bought the volumes and started reading, and it turned out that everything I did exactly matched what she did. I mean, with some twists, obviously.
Right.
In my own homeschool, I was like, oh, I am a Charlotte Mason home educator. I did not even know that. And so it was really inspiring to go, wow, I might be doing something right. Because I had broken away from the textbook way. I didn't want to teach my children the way I had been taught to teach.
I think it's intuitive, like some of it is intuitive, that this is how students learn. And if you're a good teacher and you're working with students, and it sounds like you are, like you intuitively know, like, okay, this is how we should approach XYZ. I was kind of the same way. Like I had taught kindergarten and I had the textbooks that they gave me. I'm like, there's no way I'm using these at this private Christian school. I'm like, I'm not teaching kids how to read using this. And I was like, okay, well, how would kids really learn how to read? You know, I was like, well, the kids love nursery rhymes and we can teach sight words from the nursery rhymes. And we can learn word families and, you know, as I made this whole curriculum. And then when I was writing a general feast and I wanted to include a reading curriculum, I started researching more about how Charlotte Mason taught reading. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the same way. Like, yes, they just have to redo it, right? But it's like, there's this intuitive, natural, like, this is how students learn. It just makes sense.
Right. And then if you try it the other way, it doesn't work. And so you end up the Charlotte Mason way by accident. Yeah.
We'll get there all eventually, right?
Everybody's going to be Charlotte Mason eventually. They just don't know it. So Levinson comes running down the aisle to tell you, that is Charlotte Mason.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. That's so fun. And it was kind of similar for me too, of how I got into homeschooling. I was in a Bible study and my oldest had colic and she cried the whole time. So I spent most of the Bible study in the nursery, and the girls that worked in the nursery were all homeschooled. They had like homeschool co-op that would meet at the same time at that church. And I just remember, same thing like you said, they were articulate, they were mature. I would just sit there and talk to them the whole time. And I was like, how can my child turn out to be like you? And not that there's any formulas, right? But I definitely saw a difference in the students that I had taught when I was a public school teacher and these children right there. So that speaks volumes, I think, too, of homeschooling. But all right, so let's talk about, how did you come to speak a second language? I guess because you have these classes, but how did you come to speak Spanish?
So I took French in high school just because I didn't want it. So my brother's the same age as me. And so I didn't want to be in the same classes as him. So he took Spanish, so I took French. So that's why I took French in high school. But then when I wanted to teach, I wanted to teach ESL. I wanted to teach English as a second language. Here in Texas, you can't get a major in ESL. You have to major in something else. And so I thought, well, most of my students their families will probably speak Spanish. Mm-hmm. And so one of my degrees was Spanish. And I went to Spain to solidify my fluency, as at the time Mexico was not very safe. Mm-hmm. And so I became fluent over in Spain. Then I came back and had to undo a lot of my.
I was going to say, right? Yeah, it's a little different, right?
Not too different, but different enough that my Mexican friends made a lot of fun of me, and I did get into a few little troubles with those differences. So I did a 3-year study on the regionalisms of the Spanish language and the vocabulary and accents and things like that. So I worked very hard to make my accent non-regional. So when I meet somebody, they ask me, "De dónde eres? Where are you from?" I'm like, "Aquí, Texas." And like, "This before." So it's really cool. I'm like, because they can't place my accent, and so I work very hard at sounding native, but they don't know which country.
Right.
So anyhow, so that's how I learned, is at Baylor, and graduated with a degree. Never got to teach English as a second language in the public schools one time. I did adult literacy classes in the evenings, and so that was cool, but they were all Korean, so it was my Spanish at all.
And that would be challenging, yes.
And I would still break into Spanish as if that was going to help. I would still be like, oh, let me just help.
That is so
what happened. So I taught high school Spanish and junior high Spanish in the public schools. And then since then, when I became a homeschooler, everybody that wanted the classes were honestly very young. So I called up my little sister who taught pre-K. I was like, how do you teach little kids? I don't even know.
Yeah.
how to stomp out words and have syllables and move around. And so I learned trial by fire how to teach little kids. Because my baby was 9 months old. I mean, all he did was like barely sit up, and he pooped a lot. That's kind of it.
Right. So let's just talk a little bit about how Miss Mason approached foreign languages.
Yes.
Kind of give like people a rundown, because I'm sure most people were probably like you and me. You know, I took French in high school too, by the way. Je parle français un peu, but can't speak anything now. But you know, I think most of us came from that traditional, like, you know, 1 or 2, 3 years of foreign language in high school, 1 or 2 in college, and you get a textbook and you start conjugating verbs, and you know, all the joy is taken right out of it. So, you know, for us as parents, go, okay, well, this is what I know. I still don't feel real confident in this language, right? So how is Charlotte Mason's approach kind of different from what most people experienced?
Sure. So she really liked to narrate, obviously, and like to read out loud and use normal day-to-day activities. And so in a perfect world, if we could, Charlotte Mason would have us get a native speaker to come and hang around our kids and hang around us and talk to us. And we would just live with them, and we would just understand by doing. Any formal education would be when she would teach us a series of something, you know, open the book, close the book, put the book down. And she really focused on verbs a lot, to make sure that you're not worried about conjugating them, that you're just hearing them and using them, and you're understanding them naturally. And there's lots of, you know, activities like that. So I don't want to dive into anything else. I'll just say that's, and she believed it was important, very, very important to learn a second language or multiple languages.
I was gonna say,
yeah, multiple languages, just to improve the community, just to be brotherly, and just recognize that you're not your own little country, and you should you know, increase the unity of the entire world. And it's kind of rude to just know one language. And so not only do you open up your cultures and the beauty of knowing a second language, but really it was all about relationship with her.
Yeah, that's really good. And I also like that, you know, she brings in kind of the living ideas through songs and poetry, or, you know, as they got older, reading actual living books in that language. You know, it fit so perfectly into her whole overarching philosophy of how you teach everything, right?
Right. Yeah, her foreign language was exactly like the way she taught everything else, was just say it, read it, listen to it. You know, I mean, you know, listen like to the parents reading to her, to the children, and then everybody else is listening and repeating, or listening and narrating back, if you would like to say it that way. With language, you're not typically narrating, honestly. You're really still repeating for a good long while,
right? Which
is okay, because you're understanding and you're repeating. So that's what she would have somebody do in a perfect world, is get a native speaker that could do those things for you. That's the perfect Charlotte Mason foreign language.
Right. So since that's not an option,
and
most of us don't actually speak the language that we want our kids to learn, what do you recommend on how we get started?
So what I recommend is finding a curriculum that you can break down into bits. So the problem with, I don't want to say the problem with Charlotte Mason, that's not the right way to say it. The obstacle in our brains with the Charlotte Mason method is that it's overwhelming. She did speak with so much confidence and authority, and she did have access to native speakers. You know, I mean, in England, you have a lot of, you know, it's a tiny country. There's a lot of options around you. Where we live, we don't have that option as much. So what I would say is find a curriculum that you can break down into smaller bits, if the curriculum itself doesn't break it down. I hate to do a plug, but mine's flashcard based, and that is why, because the X+1 theory. So I'll grab a card. So here's, you know, just this is the card for Libro book. And so she really wanted you to hear the word first before you ever saw any written word at all. So you would look at this, and then the audio on mine would say Libro. And so if you can't speak by yourself, then you need something that has audio. Obviously, you want that native tongue or that native sound. And then the student and you, the whole family, are looking around and seeing it, and they're saying Libro. Then we add it with a series of some sort. So you can say, I like the book, or I need the book, or where is the book? She would have focused on the verbs with it. With like me,
open the book, shut the book. Yeah.
Open the book, shut the book, place the book.
We did that one.
I do it the other way, where we're changing out the nouns.
Okay.
The reason for that is because just like our mother tongue does affect the way we learn, right? She points that out. You should learn your second language the way you learned your first language. Well, in English, we learn nouns first. You ask the baby, you want baba, you want dada. And so you're focusing on nouns. You're pointing at things in nouns.
I thought of it that way. Yeah.
Right. And so our brains are already hardwired to get the vocabulary of the things around us, not so much what we're doing. So it's always about nouns first. So that's why I do it the way I did is the sentence starter stays the same. I like, or I need, or I don't like. That stays the same. And then we change the noun out to, whatever it is. And so you're listening and you're putting it down and you're hearing the word and repeating it. But the kid or the student or the family, whoever, gets to decide how to change it. So then that gives the control over your atmosphere as well. So you're not just, that kind of gives you the formulation of narration. So if you don't have a curriculum that does that for you, especially if you're not doing Spanish, because I can't help you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming. French is coming, and I think we got flip-flop Chinese coming, and flip-flop German is coming, but not for a few months.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I'm very excited because I'm like, oh, I can finally learn German, because I'm the same way. I'm overwhelmed. The curriculums are too fast and I can't do it. I need it to be broken down to one card at a time. Yeah. And so I'm so selfish. I'm like, I want my kids to learn German. So I need my German friend to hurry up and get these done.
Well, that's how I felt like with the, so we did French. So again, very hard to find stuff. But I'm probably going to say this incorrectly, the Hachette books that she used in her curriculum, they start off with pictures.
Okay.
So they're learning, cup, bowl, table, livre, right? And then, kind of combining those into simple sentences and then combining those into stories. And then it would show a picture, and then the kids would be able, can you narrate, can you say what's happening in this picture? Even if they can only say like one word, right? Like Frio, it's a cold winter scene. Like, and that's all they're still narrating, and they're trying to use some of the vocabulary that they've learned.
Right. Yes. Same exact idea. Just a little bit, X plus one, wherever you are is X. And you need to try and push your child, push yourself just one level. Otherwise, not only is it too hard and it makes you feel like I'm failing. And so that's another obstacle you now have to overcome in your brain, but you also won't remember it. It won't go into long-term memory. And so you're checking a box, but you're not able to use your tool. And so why are we homeschooling?
Yeah, right.
Let's not just check the box. We can check the box by putting them on the big yellow bus, and they can check the box and sit for 8 hours and come out of it knowing nothing. They can't even order a taco. Like, that's horrible.
Right. That is true. Yes. Like, come on, this is important. You should be able to order a taco.
Or find where the bathroom is. I think most people in Texas know where the bathroom is.
Yeah. Important questions like that, right? And so so I'm just going to repeat, make sure I'm getting it right. So you want something that has an audio component of it, unless you already speak it, which then you probably don't need this podcast. So you need the audio component, and then something that breaks things down into simple, learning a few words each week. And she said that too, that's how it is in English. When you're learning how to read, she had them learn, sight and sound. So they were learning, 10 or so sight words every week. And she said, by the end of the thing, they'll have like 1,000 words that they can put together and read all these different combinations of things. So it's similar, except that in foreign language, they're not reading the words. That's
right.
Component. They're not seeing it. They're just hearing it. And either like you have the flashcards or you have an actual book, like something they're seeing and going, oh, this is a pencil, right? And something they can see, but they're not seeing the word. Now, why do you think you did that for foreign language? But in English, it's a sight word. They're seeing the over and over and over.
Right. Yeah. So they need to, so if you have a curriculum already that doesn't do this for you, and you're like, oh no, I spent $400 in this other curriculum and it doesn't do that. Now what do I do? That's okay. I'm not saying throw your money away. I'm saying take that long list of words that tries to make you learn 20 in a week and break it down. Oh, you don't have flashcards? That's okay. Go to the grocery store, get a set of index cards, and have your child doodle. And so they draw the word, and then they draw the picture, and then on the backside, they're digging it for themselves. You put it in your personal learning dictionary that Charlotte talked about. So this is what I have my students do. So if you don't want to do an index card, I have this little skinny book. And so this is what they do. They write their Spanish on one side and draw a picture on the other. Or if they're not doodlers, which some kids really don't want to doodle, you write your Spanish on one side and your English on the other. And then you can quiz yourself by looking at it and saying it. Or the mom sits on this side and the student sits on that side. So either way, she said, every time you learn a new word, you should be recording that. And that was something that I had in my classes. Again, same thing, way before I knew that Charlotte Mason also said to do it. So I was like, yay, I'm doing something right.
Well, that's how it is for English too. So when they're learning how to read,
right,
you would have them write the word, and when they're little, they're using shaving cream or sand or something like that. But then they would have a little book, words I can read, and they would write the words that they can read, and they can go back and read through them again and practice them, and same thing, right?
Yes. And then at the end of the year, you have this wonderful record. Like she was saying, it builds up 6 words a week, 6 words a week, 6 words a week. And it's amazing how many words you know, especially if you're learning them in a series. And so you can say, I like at the top of the list, and then all the nouns. And then you can say, I like, and then verbs. I like to buy, to swim, to draw, to paint, to listen. So I do add in verbs, but not initially, because like I said, our brain's hardwired for nouns first. So let's go ahead and formulate that the way our brain already works. Let's not fight against the natural way that we learned our first language.
But that wouldn't necessarily be right away. It would be after the kid has heard the word several times.
Absolutely.
Then they can start copying them and doing copy work as they get older. Right. Okay.
Yes. You want to hear it first, hear it and say it, see the picture, understand what's happening here. If they need to flip over and check, you have an analytical mind that's going to be, I'm not sure I'm saying it right. That's okay. But that's not the focus. So if they need to check it real quick, okay, that's fine. Check it. Yeah, right. But next time you say it, you're looking at the picture. You are not reading it. We don't want to depend on the letters. We want to depend on every time they see it, they're like, oh, tazón, because it's training their brain to think in Spanish rather than reading and translating, which is what we did in high school, right? We read and we translated and we read and we translated. Rather than being able to see a bowl, we would have to see the word bowl in our brain and tazón and then say it, which is why it took us so long to put anything together at all.
Right.
But now with the pictures, you just read the pictures, and that's how our brain usually works. We think more in pictures than in letters.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense too, because the letters represent different sounds in different languages. They don't represent the same sounds that we have in English, but our brains naturally want to try to read that word using how we phonetically sound things out. And especially if you have a young child who's just phonetically learning how to sound out English, which is extremely confusing, right? And then add another language where these letters actually say something completely else, right? It's way too overwhelming, And she said, what if we had to learn English the way back then they were teaching German in the schools, every phonetic combination before we could learn a foreign language? Like, you would be bored out of your mind, right?
Right.
Which a lot of high school foreign language kids are. So, rather than having to learn every phonetic combination, let's just start learning some of these nouns, and let's do it for little kids learning how to read English, but let's learn it the same way in foreign language. And I love that her methods don't change for this versus this. It's always consistent, which is just mind-boggling. She was such a genius, right?
Right. Well, the big thing too was not so much whether she was focused on nouns or verbs, but the main idea is that they're used in a sentence. So it's not a list of just nouns. And same with mine. It's you're immediately using it. And for me, the first thing we say is I like, and because kids love to give opinions. And so that's the very first thing. And I teach them later how to say I don't like, but they're able to choose which of these cards do they want to put with I like. And so that gives them that control as well. And so she gave control with, you're doing the thing. So the student has the control by listening, showing, and then later saying it back to them. Right. So same idea, you're grabbing the information, demonstrating that I know it. So for me, it's moving the flashcards around on the table and pointing and touching. And then for her, it was actually physically showing it and moving. But yeah, as long as you have audio and demonstration of understanding, you can make any curriculum follow that method. Just make sure that it's small chunks, not 20 words a week. We're talking 6 or so.
Yes, I like the small chunks idea. And again, it has to be consistent with the whole philosophy. So if you have a curriculum where it's taking you, like you were saying, like an hour of a class time, That's way too long because
Right.
short lesson says we should have short lessons for everything. Our attention spans aren't that long. So it also applies to foreign language, right? And she, she had the Form 1 kids doing, 2 to 3 days, 15 minutes a day, and that was it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, taking whatever resource you have and kind of breaking it into those kind of sections. What do you see as the benefit of doing it multiple times a week for a shorter amount of time?
So first of all, it gives you the ability to actually do it, right? So you're achieving something. So a student that doesn't like, some students just don't like foreign language, right? They just have an opinion against it for whatever reason. So they have an attitude. And so you have to overcome that attitude by saying, don't worry, it's just a short amount of time. And I think that's brilliant for Charlotte Mason's method for all subjects. Everybody has affinity for some subjects and a lack of affinity for others. Right. That's okay because it's only 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I tell my kids all the time, come on, you can do anything for 15 minutes.
That's right. You can do anything, set the timer. And so for any handwriting, copy work, anything that I'm having my children do that they don't like, I'm like, just set the timer. And they're amazed at how much they get done if they just set the timer and just put their head down and get it done. So that's one of the benefits, is just knowing that I can accomplish it. It's not going to be forever. It's not going to be very long. And all of my lessons, the very first one is 8 minutes long, unsee it and say it. And the longest one is 15. I think it takes longer to actually put the cards on the table than it does to actually do the lesson itself.
Yeah.
So, and then multiple times a week, obviously you've got to repeat it. You're not going to be able to listen exactly or remember or confidently remember exactly what happened. So it's better to hit 3 times, 4 times a week. 3 times is what I always try for. If you only hit it twice, I would recommend hitting that same lesson one more time next week. Like, don't go on just because the week's up.
Okay.
So the idea would be 3 times. If you can do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and your children are showing mastery, move on to lesson 2. If the more idea is that you've done it 3 times, and so it's in that long-term memory, is more important than the length of time. It's how many times have you done the lesson that the children have absorbed it. And with these kinds of cards or whatever, if you do your own drawing, even better, because they own that so much more. It takes longer, but
right.
they own the picture. And
right.
So you probably only have to hit it 3 times because not only did they draw it, but then they did it. So
yeah. So we're doing about 6 to 10 words a week,
right.
Repeating those same 6 to 10 words 3 times before you move on to another set.
You add new words, absolutely.
And then do you take the words that you've already learned and review them at all?
Yes. So every 6 weeks, for my curriculum, I stop. And so I would recommend the same thing. So the public school did get something right. That 6-week term, that's a good thing. So every 6 weeks. And I think that's true of everything. New jobs, wait 6 weeks. Everything gets easier in about 6 weeks. And so every 6 weeks, you want to stop and look at your skinny book, look at your learning dictionary or your stash of flashcards, no matter what curriculum it is. Every 6 lessons, stop and review and go back and just flip back. And they're going to be like, wow, that is now easy. And so that's feeding that momentum, going, I have learned, because you always feel like there's so much more to learn. But if you stop and look back, you can see how much you learned in those 6 weeks. And that's very encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a key because, right, you're learning a whole new language. Of course, there's infinite possibilities of things that you could learn, right? Instead of like focusing on all that we can't say, right? Let's focus on the things we can say.
Right. And you're constantly thinking, oh, I don't know how to say that, because you want to communicate.
Yes.
And so all your brain does is point out all the stuff you don't know yet. And that's not helpful. So going back and say, okay, I can't say this. And that's why we try to use I like and I need. That's my first lesson, because those are things that you do need to say. So even if you say I need, and you don't know what the word is for this, you can say necesito, and your mom say, sí, puede tener, puede tener if you want to, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that. And using it other times too, other than those lesson times, right?
Absolutely.
Do you have any strategies or thoughts on that? Kind of incorporating it into your daily life?
Yes. So I'm actually working on phrase boards is what I'm going to call them, where after every 3 or 4 weeks, you post it somewhere. And so it's just on your, on your bulletin board, on your refrigerator, on somewhere, just to get it into your mind, into your arena, into your atmosphere, to help you remember to say it. So that is a very hard part for, I think, everybody. It's so much easier just to communicate in your first language, even with my students, my own children, 2 of them are fairly fluent and the others not as much yet. And it's just dependent on, how much you want to, how much energy you put into it. And so I speak Spanish to them sometimes like to keep the other kids from knowing what I'm talking about, like ones, and that'll frustrate the ones that don't know as much. And they're like, Mom, in English, por favor. I'm like, lo siento, I'm not going to. So
so funny.
Yeah, and so I wish I would like to use it more and more and more often. So strategies for using that: planning out a time of day every day that you do it, lunchtime, snack time, right after you brush your teeth, right before something, right after something. So just kind of give yourself a trigger of, what can we say right now? And so you can even just ask questions, find out how do you say that question in that language. And of course, my curriculum leads you through that. But you will have to, again, dig for yourself a little bit and prepare a little bit. There are curricula out there that does help you with that to get ready. But posting it on the wall, I have a calendar like that actually goes on the wall. And so you could hang it up in your school area, and that just, so that just has it always there. So you're gently learning the days of the week, gently learning the months of the year. And students are seeing it.
Yeah.
That helps them too.
Yeah, I love that. That's really easy to learn a few weather things. What is the weather today? Or learning the days of the week, and just, what is today? Very simple things that naturally you're going to need to know and talk about, right?
I mean, we post, like in my schoolroom, there's grammar rules up on the wall. I have the school type poster boards up on the wall just so that the kids don't have, oh yeah, that's right. So they don't have to remember, because it's right there. Prepositions and punctuation and capitalization. Having stuff up around you is helpful.
Yeah,
and it's a constant reminder. So why not in Spanish? Post something just to help you go, oh yeah, I should speak Spanish. Because sometimes that's all you need. You just need a visual reminder.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. And do you have any advice on encouraging kids to try to talk in a language and getting past the barrier of that being awkward?
Like with strangers or with the family?
Even just with the family, yeah. Strangers, that's a whole nother.
Right.
Of course, my kids, gosh, we're at a pool and there's these people that were speaking French, and my kids tried to talk to them and they had no idea what they were saying. So I felt really bad for my kids, but they tried. They had no fear. That was good. I was like, yay. But like my southern northern accent with French accent, like it was just whatever they're learning is horrible. I'm sorry, kids.
So to get over the awkwardness, if you have that, so far I haven't heard of that much with the flashcards. I think that happens when they're trying to read it. Okay. So if you have a curriculum that is reading based,
yeah, maybe
I think that provides a fear that doesn't necessarily need to be there. But if you're doing picture based stuff, it's typical that it doesn't bother you. You're just mimicking the sounds. El tazón. You're like, oh, el tazón. Yeah. You have no idea what it looks like, but you're like, okay, tazón. You're fine, and so the student is fine.
Yes.
Older students sometimes they do focus on this side, and they do worry about, especially if they're perfectionists, they worry about it. So what I do is we watch DVDs in Spanish. Okay. And so, and I actually have a curriculum. I taught 1 year, a whole class just on movies. It was so great. Oh, and so we learned the words from a certain section of the movie. Yeah. And watch the movie and then talked about it. So it was same idea of Charlotte Mason. Watch the movie, narrate about the movie, learn the vocabulary words, put stuff together. It was so
it didn't have like subtitles. It was like no. Listen to it. Yeah. Okay.
So you can go to any DVD. I know it's harder now. So funny. We have all this access to all this entertainment, but it's actually harder now to get the audio switched to Spanish. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't bought DVDs in a while, it's a great reason to buy a DVD, because you go to audio setup, choose French or Spanish spoken, not the subtitles, and it's all dubbed beautifully and a wonderful accent. I mean, like Finding Nemo in Spanish, those Australian sharks, they still sound Australian. It's great.
That's awesome.
And Batman is so funny in Spanish.
That is so cool. That is so great. Yeah, I love that idea. Something interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, something interesting, and it gives it value. And so the students that are awkward or frustrated, they can start hearing it in a format that they're entertained by, and then they're excited. So typically, I've seen that really cross over the awkward bounds if you have it.
Yeah, one of the things I recommend for high school kids as well is finding music that they like in that language. Yeah, it's a great whatever thing. Genre they like, there's going to be that in whatever language, most likely.
Check the lyrics, because a lot of times they're walking around, they're singing stuff, and it's My little girl did not know what she was singing.
Oh my, oh my. Okay, yes. Well, yeah.
Perfect accent.
Check the rating in Spotify. Yeah.
Yes, check the lyrics.
I do know that Hillsong Worship has a Spanish YouTube channel that is fantastic.
Yes.
So finding worship music, you're probably okay.
Yes, that's a good point. Worship music, but kids are gonna.
Yeah, right. If they like rap and they want to listen to Spanish rap, yeah,
yes.
You might want to check it out. Exactly.
I see.
Oh my God.
Input.
Well, yeah, and again, like we're here having a good time, right? But it's making it fun and not this chore that we all have to do, and
what's giving it back to, they're realizing, oh, people actually use this. This is actually a valuable tool. This is not just another subject. This is not drudgery to make me miserable. There are thousands, millions of people that speak this language, and wouldn't it be cool if I could be one of them?
Yeah, that's great. And that would be so wonderful. Yeah. Like Charlotte Mason was saying, to bring people together, and the whole point, right? Exactly. I love that. So where can people find out more about you and what you have to offer?
So flipflopspanish.com has everything that I was showing and talking about with the flashcards. That's for ages 3 years old all the way up to 9th graders or 10th graders will benefit from that. And then after high school, SpanishGeniuses.com has the video courses. And so I have kind of two different sides that don't talk to each other too much. But if you're a flip-flop family, you turn into Spanish Geniuses.
Okay, so Spanish Geniuses, that's high school level.
That's junior high and high school. So right into video courses, which would not be super Charlotte Masonry, but it would be like after you've had the foundation. And so then you're ready for the literature, you're ready for the heavy duty stuff. That's when I would recommend it. So always start with the flashcard based, simple, chunky, see it and say it, and learn that way before you dive into the video courses.
Well, I mean, her high school foreign language classes were no joke. I mean, they're harder than college level foreign language courses. I mean, they're really Don Quixote in Spanish.
Right. And that's what I had to do. I had to do it too, but you had many years
of that foundations. Yes.
That. And that's the thing. A lot of us start in 9th grade. You can't do it. You can't dive in and learn, read Don Quixote in Spanish. No. Without having, I like the bowl.
Right. I'm just saying, I think it makes sense that your high school program would have some of that meatier stuff, because that is what she would have had in her upper forms as well. They would have very meaty stuff, because they had that foundation. And like you're saying, you can't just jump into it.
Not effectively, not with a lot of benefit. You can check it off and you can do it. If you have zero knowledge and you want to start high school Spanish Geniuses level 1, you can. And you'll be fine. It starts back with the vowels and things like that, but your confidence will soar and you'll feel so good. You'll be like, oh, I know most of this. And that's what I want when you start high school level 1, lesson 1. I want your feelings to be like, well, I already know this. I can totally read this whole story. And so students that have had see it and say it, to them, it's just literature. It's just literature and grammar in Spanish. It's no big deal, because they've already done the see it and say it. Yeah.
But I love that you bring in the literature component. That's definitely Charlotte Mason way that she taught upper level languages through that literature. So that's fantastic. And reading it, that's practicing it, reading it and then talking about it, narrating. I mean, that's
yeah, absolutely.
And can't give more Charlotte Mason than that. Right.
Yeah, it's all the same stuff that she would have us do. But it's a textbook type thing. Spanish Now is the textbook we use.
They were doing grammar and conjugating and doing all that stuff at the high school level for sure. Yeah. But now we live in a day where, we can have people that aren't in our house through video and Zoom and whatever teach it to our children for us. So that's even better. So let's use the tools that we have, right? That we don't have to all do things the way she would have had to back then. So it makes sense that we're taking those kind of principles, but then adapting them and making them accessible. So I hope that, through our time together today, people feel like, okay, there is a way to break this down again and make it simple.
Yes.
Find the audio.
Right. Keep the audio.
Make a series, keep learning those same words, keep repeating it, keep adding on to it. And then when your kids are ready for high school for some more meatier material and to get the high school credits that they need, they have that foundation. So
yes. And I would recommend to those moms that feel like they need to start, high school level 1 in 9th grade, You don't, right? You usually typically only need 2 years, sometimes 3, depending on the degree that you want from college. If your kid's college bound, I don't think everybody has to go to college either. It's
Right.
what you want. But I would recommend, if you have a 9th grader and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot about foreign language, please don't throw them into high school level 1. Please do the simple flashcards. I know it feels easy. That's a good thing. It's a freshman who is hitting heavier literature and heavier grammar and heavier paper writing and narrations and all these other things that are heavy for them. Let's give them something fun and easy and start with something that's really simple. Let them lead the other kids if they're, one of the older students and you're like, oh gosh, no, don't sign them up for some, high school level 1 Spanish, French, German. Let them do an elementary type thing, gain that confidence, learn the audio, and then they've got that at least a year, 3 months, even if you can just give them 3 months, please. It will make them actually be able to speak. It just kills me when people do 2 and 3 years of Spanish and they can't speak. I hate it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because here there's a big push to put to take a foreign language high school credit in 8th grade, even.
Right.
They brought it down to 8th grade. And well, that's great. But if you finished your 3 years of high school Spanish by, let's say, 10th grade, then when you go to college, maybe you don't even take your foreign language credit to your sophomore. Then it's been 4 years since you've had that language, right? Like the amount that you retain, if you're not continually using it for some reason, is going to be very small. So why we feel the need to push it so early, I do not know. Because like you said, most kids are not going to take 4 or 5 years of a high school. Most high schools don't even offer that, right?
Oh.
Then you're going to have this big gap. So yeah, doing more of this foundational listening and speaking and just hearing the language before you dive into reading it. Yeah.
Like, how about we enjoy it? How about we love it? How about we dig into the culture? How about we take the time and just go, wow, and look at the geography? There's so many things to do. If you feel the need to take Spanish 1 as an 8th grader, and I do have students in my classes right now that are 8th graders that I teach here, locally. What I do is I break it up. So I have high schoolers, but it's Spanish 1A. And so we take 2 full years to do level 1.
Yes, that would even work as well. Yeah.
I'm able to break these down. We play charades, we do all the actions, we role play, and we're making flashcards constantly because we have the time. We're not barreling through. Like you said, your own children had trouble with Spanish 2 in college. It just ate their lunch because
such a big gap. Yeah.
The pace. It's not so much the gap, I don't think. It's the pace of trying to understand these grammatical concepts, because it's grammar pushed rather than communication pushed. And that's what it's all relational. Language is relational. So we need to talk about, what are we trying to say and why are we trying to say it, and learn that. That's more important than how to say it.
Yes, right. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, so take your time, please.
Yes, take your time.
People in high school, you have time. You have time. I know it doesn't feel like that for some reason. You get all like, oh, college is right around the corner when they're freshmen, but you do have time. And this is one of the areas where it's going to be very beneficial to slow down or to do some more of the playing and listening before you dive into the reading and grammar and that kind of thing. So thank you so much for your time, and we will definitely link to everything in the show notes so people can check all that out. So thank you.
Thank you.